this lecture, we are going to introduce a relevant topic in the educational and social field, the inclusive education and its impact on the quality of access and participation, in particular regarding people with disabilities. The term inclusive education refers to a quality education addressed first of all to those people who experience any kind of barriers related to the access and participation in different contexts of living. Inclusive education aims at responding to diversity of all learners by reducing education exclusion in order to ensure human rights, equal opportunities and social participation. As underlined within the European disability strategies, people with disabilities are constantly interacting with various barriers that can hinder their full and effective participation in society on equal basis with other and not only individual empowerments. The aim should be to promote the full economic and social participation of people with disabilities in order to create smart, sustainable and inclusive growth. This important goal is highlighted in the European Agenda 2030, which for the first time devotes a specific objective to inclusive education, raising efforts to carry out better results towards achieving the objectives of the universal education, ensuring equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for the vulnerable, including persons with disabilities, indigenous peoples and children in vulnerable situations. The direction to be taken is to provide safe, non-violent, inclusive and effective learning environments for all. The mentioned aspects underline the strategic importance, on one hand, to guarantee access to education at all levels to people with disabilities, facilitated by reasonable accommodation, and on the other hand, to promote the active participation of people with disabilities in the preparation of adult life, as underlined by the four-sided Salamanca Declaration. Thus, inclusive education refers to an approach that aims at modifying the entire institutional system. It creates an osmosis between intervention on the context, the person, and the educational need of the people with disabilities, and the socio-cultural changes of the specific context of living. As a consequence, training paths and other educational initiatives are encouraged and supported in order to raise social awareness and cultural attitude and to contribute to the reduction of stereotypes and prejudice towards people with disabilities. What kind of responsibilities for individual and the community?
The issue of responsible contest is a pivotal element in order to enhance the quality of access and participation, and thus of inclusion. According to the International Classification on Functioning, Disability and Health, it is essential not to characterize or define people just by the expression related to their disablement, the restriction on their activities, or of their participation. It is indeed the interaction between the health condition and the background factor which produces disability, and not the deficiency related to a single person. The change introduced by this classification, therefore, not only involves the introduction of the class of the environmental factor which allow the plan and organized action in the social and environmental fields, but above all, it involves a shift from a merely medical vision of the disability to a multidimensional one. The responsibility then is no longer ascribed to the person excluded because of his/her disability, but to the context in which the person is and interacts with. In order to clarify what we have introduced in this lesson, let's take into consideration the founding myth on the special pedagogy one more. We are talking about the history of the wild boy, a 10-12-year-old boy who has been found abandoned in the wood at Aveyron in France between 1799 and the beginning of the following century. Even though the sauvage, named at a later stage Victor, was defined as an idiot and ineducable by medicine at that time. Itar, the doctor who took care of him, would try to implement an educational project in the direction of what later would be defined as a helping relationship. The relationship between Itar and Victor indeed represents the paradigm of privileged pedagogical meeting, with its imperfection, thickness, and creases. This relationship symbolizes a mutual quest for identity as well. Itar becomes someone, helping a no one to become someone. The helping relationship, such as the one promoted by Itar towards Victor, implies caring for the other, the thankfulness and the concern for his existential project, focusing both on the single person and on the context where the person lives. The possibility, then, is one on the unavoidable dimension of the educational experiences, where education refers to a training process in which a person or a group grows over time in continuous tension from the present to the future, towards something that is still not set up and that can always be improved. Educability. Family represents the main educational body in which educational and caring relationships develop. These relationships aim at promoting processes of identification and at gaining autonomy. Parents of children with disability may need social support as well as the possibility to access health and social services urgently. Parents and the educational community therefore become equally responsible to the promotion and the achievement of inclusive processes. The most relevant example is the one implemented by the Italian educational system, whose legislation guarantees all minors to have access to regular schooling. The same applies to the system of health and social services, which is organized to meet these inclusive requests. The responsibility of the single ones, such as parents, therefore is empowered within the community and the social context. Therefore, in this lecture, we have seen how inclusive education refers to concepts such as participation to be guaranteed to all and shared responsibility between the different actors and the context. Context plays a decisive role and no longer just as a background. On the contrary, the construction of a context accessible to all calls into question the responsibility of each one. In co-responsibility and collaboration in educational action, it will be possible to allow everyone to have a good quality of life in the society of all.